The Eyes of Darkness, Dean Koontz. This is the novel which is supposed to have predicted the outbreak of coronavirus. You must have seen these two pictures circulating on the net in the past few weeks, and mainly because it is connected to the alleged conspiracy theory connected to the outbreak of this pandemic. In the novel, we have the name of the virus Wuhan 400. This is the edition 1996. They say, after I had done some research online, that this name was different in the first edition in 1981. I have prepared a very interesting and comprehensive book review for you today, and we're going to answer some questions. The novel takes place or is set in Las Vegas and neighboring cities. The time it's in 1980s. We understand it only from the context. This is a certain sketch where the events of the novel take place. First we have Las Vegas, then Reno, and the novel where the events end up in the Sierras, where the accident first happened before the start of the novel, and then in this place, in this mountain, where we have laboratory of microbiology. The main characters: the family Evans, Michael Evans, Christina Evans, who is called in the novel Tina, and Danny, their boy. You have the lawyer Elliot Stryker, and you have Secret Network. George Alexander, chief of Nevada Bureau of Investigation, is the boss of this network. And you have Harold Kennebec, the judge, is member of this organization. We have Harold Kennebec and Elliot Stryker served before in the military intelligence, and they served in Iraq, in Middle East, and other places around the world. Well, so concerning the plot, we have the novel opens with Christina dreams of her deceased boy Danny alive and asking her for help from a sort of a tunnel. She tries to rescue him, but she can't reach out to him. So to put some context here, Christina and Michael had been married for more than a decade, but they got divorced because of certain lack of commitment on the part of the husband. To add more information, the husband had been feeling jealous of Christina because she has been trying to move up the ladder of success. She started as a dancer and now she is trying to be a producer. So Michael used to spend weekends away from home, which caused certain isolation for Danny. So Danny was 12 years old, and now he is living with his mother. So one day he asks her mother to go on a scouting trip. It's a 7-day survival wilderness excursion in the high mountains in the high Sierras of Nevada. Well, he and his friends go under the auspices of a famous scout, Jabrowski. This famous scout has been doing just fine for over 16 years of experience. He has been taking kids to the mountains for 7 days and bringing them back in safe and happy. However, this time a very serious accident happened and all the excursionists died. It was sort of a mystery. Nobody expected such things to happen, but it just happened and people got used to it. So, the police reported the accident and brought back the bodies of the deceased, and everybody had the chance to look at their deceased relative. However, the Evans not given permission to see the body of their kid because they protested that the body of the kid was badly mutilated and it would just cause them a shock. So, 1 year later, after the death of their kid, Danny, Christina is preparing for New Year's Eve show in the hotel in the hotel where she works. It's the Pyramid, and everybody expects this show to be highly successful. So the show is a success as expected, highly acclaimed by the attendees, and of course during her show she meets the lawyer Elliot Stryker. They are going to fall in love, and he is going to stand by her all over the bad events that are going to unfold later as she is trying to find out the truth behind the death of her son. The day of her show, she is at home resting and preparing herself to go. She feels that someone has broken in. She takes her pestle and goes to check. And when she enters the room of Danny, something weird started to happen. The room of Danny has been kept intact. His stuff started moving weirdly and the chillness reigns over the place. His chalkboard was laid on the floor. She picks it up and she turns it over. There was a terrible shock. 2 words, "not dead," were written on the chalkboard. As she is a wise, mature, and smart woman, she thinks rationally and logically and tries to find out the reason behind these silly things. She thinks of her husband and she accuses him of all this weird stuff. Later on, she informs Elliot, and both of them try to find out a logical explanation of what is going on. They come up with an idea that everything was just hallucinations because Christina did not see the body of her son. She still has doubts that her son might not have died in that accident and he is still alive. So she decides to reopen the grave and exhume the body so as to dispel all the doubts. Elliot Stryker builds up a strong case and goes to his friend Kennebec to rule in their favor, and this way they are going to prevent the father from blocking the procedure. Kennebec shows certain hesitance and sends Stryker home, promising him that he is going to tell him the news later on. Stryker then and Christina are attacked separately in their homes. Stryker first receives 2 strong men trying to orchestrate a suicide. He knocks one down and the other one runs away. Stryker immediately goes straight to Christina and rescues her from an explosion of her house. At that point, a manhunt starts. The couple to be exterminated as Alexander the boss has just ordered. They infer that Kennebec must be part of a network. And Danny is not dead because he has started communicating with them telekinetically. Telekinesis is the ability or the power to move things and objects without touching them, just by thinking about them. And here, Alexander orders the death of people involved in that whole story of the accident of the Scouts. This way, they are going to block the way to truth for the couple. Elliot and Christina decide to go to the mortician in Reno. He is the only one who was the last to see the bodies of the Scouts. At that, near his house, they were about to fall prey and be killed by the gangs. They resort to a hotel and bring a hypnotist to hypnotize her to communicate with Danny, because she was trying to receive the message of her boy, but she was resisting. So she needed to be hypnotized so as to have smooth communication with her boy. We talk about here paranormal things, and that are widely common in this now from this part. The operation goes well, and Christina draws the way to the place of Danny on the map, and they decide to go straight to the place. So here, at this moment, supernatural powers of Danny become a common practice. So from exactly from the hotel, and as we go here, he shows the roads and he opens up the doors. Of course, he stops guns and the machine guns from functioning. At last, they make it to the lab and rescue Danny and interrogate the biologist in charge of the facility. He tells them the whole truth about the faked accident of the Scouts. So let's first hear about what the biologist tells them about the virus. So here, to understand that Dumi said, so here Dumi is the doctor who is responsible there. We had two. So this is the older one. Dumi said, you have to go back 20 months. It was around then that a Chinese scientist named Li Qin defected to the United States carrying a discrete record of China's most important and dangerous new biological weapon in a decade. Here we understand that the context is in the 80s because we have here a diskette. Okay? Diskette, it's the main object of storage that was created, the first one created for computing, to store information before the CD and DVD. So they called the stuff Wuhan 40 because it was developed at their RDNA labs outside the city of Wuhan, and it was the 400th viable strain of man-made microorganism created at that research center. Wuhan 40 is a perfect weapon. It affects only human beings. No other living creatures can carry it. Unlike syphilis, Wuhan 40 can survive outside a living human body for longer than a minute, which means it can permanently contaminate objects or entire places the way anthrax and other virulent microorganisms can. We're going to talk about anthrax later. And when the host expires, the Wuhan 40 within him perishes a short while later, as soon as the temperature of the corpus drops below 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Do you see the advantages of this? So this is the whole story. So here Eliot retorts and says, well, if I understand you, the Chinese could use Wuhan 400 to wipe out a city or a country, and then there wouldn't be any need for them to conduct a tricky and expensive decontamination before they moved in and took over the conquered territory. Exactly, Dumi said, and Wuhan 400 has other equally important advantages of most biological agents. For one thing, you can become an infectious carrier only for 4 hours after coming into contact with the virus. That's an incredibly short incubation period. Once infected, no one lives more than 24 hours. Most die in 12. It's worse than the Ebola virus in Africa, infinitely worse. Wuhan 400 kill rate is 100%. No one is supposed to survive. The Chinese tested it on God knows how many political prisoners. They were never able to find an antibody or antibiotics that was effective against it. The virus migrates to brain stem, and there it begins secreting. So if we explain something a little bit here, so we have first here the advantages of the virus. You wipe out a city, it means you exterminate people and you go safely in and you start exploiting natural resources without any fear of being contaminated. So this is one basic advantage, what they were thinking about biological weapons. The second one here, if we compare Wuhan 400 with the coronavirus today, it's completely different. Here you have only 4 hours, while for coronavirus it takes till 14 days. And you have the death rate is 100%. It means if you contract the virus, you're dead, you're finished. Here, of course, coronavirus, it's something different. And the last thing here, the coronavirus attacks the lung cells, but here the virus attacks the brain. And of course, something different. The problem here, if we want to contextualize the writing of the writer, he mentions Ebola virus, okay, in Africa. It means the virus which was famous at that time. But he doesn't mention, for example, SARS or we say MARS. It means coronavirus which showed up in Middle East in 2012. So this is mainly when we understand a work of literature in its historical context. The plot goes on, and here we hear the true story behind the disappearance of the scouts. The moment the Chinese brings the virus to the laboratory, the Americans start working to catch up with the Chinese. One scientist got infected, and instead of self-isolating, he runs away. On his way, he meets up with the scouts, means the children, and asks for help. Everybody reaches out to him to help him, and here they can track the virus. At that time, the people, after the scientists arrive and take everybody to the lab. After 24 hours, everybody dies except Danny. And here, when they study the case of Danny, they find out that he has certain immunity to the virus, and they isolate him for the sake of study. They keep injecting him all this time, all these months, and studying the reaction of his body. As a result, his brain develops a certain spot which is not a tumor, and they said that this could be accountable for his telekinetic powers. Now you've got the whole story. Now let's talk about the themes mentioned or studied in the novel. First, we have biological weapons, it's clear, and also we have many secret networks. As you see, even we have the police that you see, FBI, CIA, there is always a secret network which commands everything, which controls everything, which goes like we're just puppets and there is someone behind who controls everything. The other theme, we have maternal instinct bonds with children. It means the mother has always certain unknown, unconscious connection with children. And the last one, the will to live. As you see, Danny has been being injected all this time with this virus, and his body keeps surviving and keeps fighting for life. Now, the historical context of the novel. The novel was first published in 1981, and of course, context here is the Cold War. We understand that before the Cold War, we had 2 world wars. So the world had witnessed mainly during the Second World War collateral damage of nuclear war. You erase a whole city with all its components and everything, including humans, natural resources, and everything. And here we have nuclear deterrence. Nobody is allowed to develop a nuclear weapon and use it, because if you use a nuclear weapon, you are going to annihilate yourself. The alternative is biological weapons. The reason why, because they are easy to develop, and we have already science had reached certain stage, and the main target for the biological weapons is humans, because you eliminate humans and you don't touch natural resources. So this is why in the novel it says that the Wuhan 400 would clean the city, it means would exterminate all humans, and after 24 hours you go and start benefiting from the natural resources of the city. So here we ask why the writer says so, because we hear about the axis of evil. The axis of evil here, at that time we have the rise of certain powers, mainly communists and their allies, and they might be in the process of developing biological weapons and to attack, of course, the Western values and Western culture and the allies. We talk about the allies, United States and Europe at that time. And of course, he states certain examples, China and Iraq, and of course, we know today Iran, North Korea, and others. So as we know, literature is a fictional writing, so it is generally a product of our imagination. And we talk about imagination, there is always some sources of inspiration. And of course, it's the reality first, and something of our imaginative and creative powers of our mind. So let's think about some sources of inspiration here. First, we have similar scenarios of biological wars. You have first in 1965, the Chinese set up their Wuhan laboratory of bacteriology and virology. And during April 1979, an epidemic of anthrax occurred among the citizens of Svelzovask. I don't know how to read the word, but it's a city in the USSR. And we talk about anthrax. Anthrax, it's a pandemic, it's a virus which was spread among the cattle, among animals, but they said that it was going to infect humans as well. And of course, the last one is 1981. Iraq used mustard gas and sarin against its population and Iran. So we know this. It's a very famous story where Saddam used gas against ethnic groups inside Iraq during the Persian Gulf War. So maybe this is why the writer is writing about a biological weapon, and it has nothing to do with conspiracy theory, but only it was inspired from the events that were taking place at the time. So I hope that you're going to like the video, and please interact and give us your point of view about the book. And as you know, here now you have got a main idea. Please share your point of view and let me hear what do you think about the book review. Thank you, and see you in a next book review. Bye bye.